So, a noble attempt to invoke the kind of spirit of nationalism that brought great hope to Nigeria at independence. A spirit that the organizers of this month's National Political Summit hope will guide them as they seat beneath the frescoes of Nigeria's founding fathers and mothers and attempt to chisel out a new inclusive constitution which they believe will take this country and its more than 200 million citizens forward. The summit, which is being organized by, amongst others, the former Commonwealth Secretary General, Chief Emeka Anyaoku, will be made up of eminent Nigerians from all walks of life, including senior politicians, great thinking men and women who say they're inspired to imagine a new constitutional order that will make Nigeria a better place and help not some, but all its citizens to fulfill their full potential. But in a country where previous attempts to fashion a new people's constitution have gone nowhere, what chance is there of success this time? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the co-chairman of the National Political Summit Group and former governor of Ogun State, Senator Gbenga Daniel, who is also the Senate Committee Chairman on the Nigerian Navy. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Good evening, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
How much has this lack of an inclusive constitution, in your assessment, helped to retard development in Nigeria?
My opinion is simply that people continue to evolve. And to that extent, the laws that govern our people must also evolve. When the Nigerian 1999 Constitution was being more or less propagated, as you are aware, it was the military. And what was important to most Nigerians at that time is that the military should just go back to the barracks. So whatever they gave us, we were just quite happy with it. But decades after that has happened, clearly, there is indeed a need to continue to take a second look at the Constitution. That's where we are.
So this National Political Summit that you co-chair, the group, is aiming to redraw Nigeria's existing constitution to reflect the wishes of the Nigerian people. What would that entail?
Well, yes, that's largely
broadly speaking
correct, but we feel that there are a few areas that require tinkering with. Of course, nobody is saying that the constitution is entirely bad, but people have said that there are certain ingredients that is required for a perfect constitutional democracy. First and foremost is the capacity to replace leadership that are not doing well. So people have said that the electoral reform provisions need tinkering with. And you know how and what that has done negatively to our psyche. It's looking like the process of changing leadership is so cumbersome.
Absolutely.
And looks like the people have been more or less taken hostage and the whole process appears to be monetized. So that is not good for democracy, and there must be ways and means that needs to be checkmated. You also know that the judiciary is quite key. As I usually say, when everything fails, the citizen must have the confidence that there is a place where they can go and they will get justice. In recent times, a lot of questions have been posed with the kind of judgment that we're getting. So the judiciary requires, in my own opinion, a little bit of review. The powers that they have and their conduct and so on and so forth appears to be very, 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 very important. Of course, we won't go far if citizens don't get engaged. What do I mean by citizen engagement? Some people have said that whereas we have a large number of people who are formally educated, but that is how far it goes, they are not informed. And so when you listen to supposedly educated people debate, you wonder the amount of information that is available to them. So part of what we need to do is to create an environment where citizens can be informed. By and large, the incidence of online, thing that happens these days, there are some positives in it. Because by and large, from time to time, you do hear that things that ordinarily maybe standard stations like this will not bring out, you get things like this online. So that is very, very important. Another important thing is what I would call devolution of powers, which some people call true federalism.
Right. So decentralization of federal government.
More
powers.
or less.
Yeah.
Everybody feels that the Constitution has put all the powers in the center. In fact, specifically in the hands of one man. And he has to be a magician, for him to be able to attend to each and everything that needs to be attended to on a daily basis.
But they seem to like to do that.
Well,
all of them seem to be reluctant to let go of those powers.
No, human beings like that. Yeah. I'm not so sure. If you put me there, I would do the same. That's a matter of fact. But I think systems, can be put in place via a constitutional review.
Right.
That because no human being can effectively, if that's all you are doing operationally on a daily basis, you can't finish it. So there's no time for strategic thinking. And that is part of, in my opinion, there are other issues which we can continue to talk about as we go along.
Well, what about the strengthening of Nigeria's national identity? Because at the moment, many people identify more with their sort of ethnic sub-identities. Is that something that this constitution can address or not?
One country in the southern Africa went through turmoil. And part of what they did, I'm talking about the Tutsi
and the Hutus.
In
Rwanda.
After they came out of all that terrible experience, today, all of them are Rwanda. Somebody talk of where you come from. I think we did that sort of thing here.
Yeah.
We do have situations where people live in a location for 20, 30 years and they are still not accepted. Those are some of the things that we must look at. It's going to be quite tough because this is what people have been used to, but moving forward, it does appear that that is the way.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people would agree with you. There's got to be a middle ground between you being able to assert your identity. Because, in America, for example, people proudly say, I'm Italian American,
Correct.
I'm Irish American.
Correct.
But that comes second.
Correct.
They're usually Americans first.
Correct.
Correct. And beyond those things, which I think you've articulated very well, what are the other big constitutional issues facing this country today as it tries to stagger to its feet? After so many years of distrust and division.
Well, there are issues of religion, which, in my own opinion, is an instrument that the elite have used to divide us. Because from where I come from, for instance, my son is married to a Muslim, and there are no issues.
And you're a Christian.
I am a Christian.
Yeah.
Not just a Christian, the son of a pastor. I think that is the level we should go as a country. It's going to take some time.
But to be honest, and not to sort of ethnicize things, if you look at the ethnic groupings in Nigeria, you'll find that people from the southwest seem to be the ones who are most accommodating when it comes to religious differences. I've seen families in the southwest where they're Muslims, Christians, animists. You see what I mean? So perhaps there is some kind of lesson, as I said, without ethnicizing things, some kind of lesson that could be learned for the broader spectrum of Nigerians, where the religions are more deeply entrenched, sole religions. You see what I mean? Rather than a multiplicity of religions.
I think it's a question of education. If you monitor what is going on now, even in Saudi Arabia, things have been opening up because everybody have seen that the way to development is not to put religion in front. And most countries of the world, look at what has happened in a place like UAE in Dubai. Despite the fact that it's supposed to be a largely Muslim community, everybody is free.
They've let the economy predominate.
That is the way to go.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is missing in our country, which we must quickly adjust to. But having said that, one cannot say this job is complete if we don't take a second look at the problem of corruption. And I think that on a more serious note, the consequence and the penalty for corruption is still not good enough. That's my own honest opinion. And when you look at it from the perspective that virtually all aspects of human life is destroyed by corruption.
Well, all we have to do is look at Nigeria.
Exactly. So I am sure that we can also look at how that organization like EFCC, ICPC are given more powers and allowed to do what they are supposed to do.
Without, of course, them abusing those
When
powers.
they abuse it also, they must also pay for
Right.
it. Very, very, in fact, the payment for abuse should even be more than the punishment for what they are doing. So those are the sort of things that I think we are looking at. Also, political violence. If you look at the kind of harassment that people go through, we've gone beyond all of that. And we hope that we'll be able to look at some of these issues and come with, concrete suggestions, which hopefully can be adopted.
Well, I mean, it sounds very inspiring. I mean, listening to you, because I think people are just sick and tired of the problems that keep repeating themselves in this country over a long period of time. And it takes forward-thinking people, but also influential people who can actually get to be heard to be able to move this country forward. And you are an exceptional array of prominent voices in this country who form the body of this National Political Summit group. Can the power of your voices and your staunch advocacy help to tear down the kind of resistance that, have prevented the previous people's constitutions from being adopted? Because, I mean, you've had the 2014 sort of, national conference. There have been sovereign conferences before. There was somebody here was talking about that, the El Rufai, devolution of powers sort of committee that took place, I think, 2021 or so. And all that has just been sort of gathering dust somewhere.
Well, what I see as a difference today may be rooted on one thing that we must all take cognizance of. The president that we have today cannot be described as a conservative. I don't want to use the word revolutionary. But
well, that might be pushing it a bit, mightn't it?
When you look at where he's coming from.
Especially given how he's performed in the last 2 years.
I'm not so sure about that. If you ask me questions, I have my own views about that.
Yeah, of course.
But what I'm saying is that when you look at where he's coming from, he had been an agent of change. And I think that agents of change have no difficulties when things like this evolve. And I'm just hoping and praying that God will give him the courage, because I believe he knows what to do.
Yeah, but I mean, you I don't know if you went with the group. The Patriots went to meet him to talk about, including Chief Emeka Anyaoku, to talk about the need for fundamental constitutional change, the kind of inclusive constitution that you're talking about. And he said to them that the political side of things is not his priority. His priority is the economy.
Well, I don't see anything wrong in that, because if you get the economy right, you find it easy to get politics right as well.
Well,
I stumbled on the news as I was coming. I hope it's true that Nigeria may have finished paying the IMF liabilities a few days ago. Now,
well, that's just one aspect.
It's part of it,
economy.
and it's very, very important.
Yeah,
because
but the
yes.
point that you're making, I mean, the whole point of your national political summit is that if you don't get the politics right, you can't get anything else right.
No, not necessarily. I think from what we have said, we spoke about Rwanda just now. It was a political problem. But what have they done? They've more or less seen what they want to do with the economy. We talked about Dubai. We talked about a lot of this. When you look at it carefully, if you get the economies right, the politics also you can get right.
Well, I mean, it takes political will.
I think it should go pari passu.
Right, it takes political will. But let's move on, because I mean, it's jolly brilliant having you here. Let's move on to other connected issues of national concern. And this week we've seen another mammoth wave of defections from opposition parties to your party, the APC. How much does that apparent move towards a one-party state undermine the kind of democratic constitution that you are trying to create through this group that you've started for Nigerians? And I'm asking you to wear your hat as a member of the National Political Summit rather than as an APC member.
Maybe you should ask me to wear my hat as an individual. But on a more serious note, I think that part of the problem we're making as a people is to think that we can copy a particular situation that fits a particular set of people or country, hook, line, and sinker. We need to look at what fits us. And I'm talking personally now. What kind of party system do they have in China? How have they, as far as they are concerned, they also practice some form of democracy, which suits them. And how their virtual one-party state have, in the last two decades, they've caught up with America. So my own position is a little bit different. We need to look at the culture of our people.
Is that part of what you're going to look at this national
We will look at
summit?
it, and whatever the majority feels is what we're going to do. But one person who defected today was giving his own reasons. And he says, look, I was asked to go and make laws, but regrettably because of the level of poverty at home, the people who sent me there are asking me to do things that are not my responsibility. I can't achieve that where I am. So if I'm going to respond to the needs and the yearnings of my people, I have to move.
Then
so,
they move to the APC.
Exactly.
Where the pie is bigger.
Probably, yes.
And where the corruption is bigger.
So it's part of the challenges,
right.
but the reality of the situation which we must face. Maybe if we're able to also draw the constitution again, we can go into that area and make certain amendments, probably stopping any lawmaker from getting involved in projects. So that the people who want to elect you into the National Assembly or know that you are just going to make law and they don't make requests of you.
Well, as you said, it requires education, doesn't it?
That's it.
People have to be educated.
That's it. That's it. But you can't really blame people who are responding to the yearnings of their people, which is what we call democracy.
Yes. Well, we could talk a million ways about that. But let's turn to your role as the Senate Committee Chairman of the Navy. A big problem in this country is oil theft. What difference have we seen in that area since you've been Chairman of the Senate Committee of the Navy?
Well, let me put it this way. You will notice that I have not really granted any interview on matters of the Navy. That is not to say that everything that is going on there is perfect. But I belong to a different kind of school about matters of security. And I think, and I feel very, very seriously, that where there are challenges inside any of the security agencies, we must sit down inside and resolve it. Yeah. Now, to try to answer your question...
But you're in a public-facing job.
Yes, directly.
Where you owe responsibility to your constituents.
Yes, correct. But
and to keep them informed
about
what you're doing.
There are also limitations. If we think something can be injurious to the overall interest of the country, we have to be
but
cautious.
I don't understand how what you're doing
just a
to
minute,
improve
Charles. So let me answer your question.
Of the Navy, how that is going to be
So what I'm trying to explain to you is that since we got in there, a lot of things have happened. And I am aware of a surveillance system that is running within the Daba headquarters today. And from that surveillance system, you can monitor up to about 300 nautical miles of our entire waterways.
Well, that's significant.
So, which means that from that operational location, you really can find out if there is a movement. I've had instances where, you know, vessels have just wandered into wrong waters and they were caught. So a lot of things is going on there. But having said that, you cannot also run away from the fact that there will be some sabotage because money, big money is involved. That's going on. But recently you also notice that there's also an attempt to help the Navy with some other organization. That experiment is going on now. And in recent times, of course, you know that we have now overtaken the 2 million barrels per day mark. It was about half of that a few years back. So a lot of work quietly is going on,
right,
without a lot of noise being made. That's the way I want to put it.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, a subset of that discussion is obviously the issue of security, because, I mean, you'd had to secure the waters in order to raise the production level. So let's stay with the latest developments in the Senate, notably the plan that we heard yesterday to hold a national summit on insecurity. I mean, it looks like the national summit bug is catching on. I mean, there is your national political summit, now this national summit on insecurity. I mean, does this suggest more decisive action on insecurity, or is it just another talking shop? Because, I mean, the security agencies and the intelligence agencies know what to do, and what you don't need is another wasteful talking shop and lots of sort of speeches and lots of money spent.
Well, my own opinion is that when you get to a stage where the challenges are becoming overwhelming, somebody needs to talk about it. And whereas I'm aware that the security people, they ordinarily, with the well trained, they know their work, but they may not even appreciate the urgency and how bad the situation is. So when it comes to a state where the entire National Assembly says we want to now do security summit, they are going to put torchlight on everybody.
Yeah, but if the security people can't appreciate how bad the situation is, then we're up the creek, aren't we? I mean, because we depend on them to protect the country.
If, for instance, the National Assembly finds that a security chief is not up to, he has the right to recommend to the presidency to move.
Right. So, but that's what happens with oversight functions anyway. I mean, you don't need to call a national summit and spend lots of money in order to come to that realization.
Now, oversight function is a completely different thing. Most of the time, the oversight function try to look at matters of projects, expenditure, and things like that, not the nitty-gritty of what you can call serious security issues. You don't just go and say you're oversighting and no, you oversighting more is about what are the projects that they are doing, how efficiently are they running it, what of the budget that they have, how efficiently are they running the budget, and so on and so forth. That's what oversight is. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty of security, there are even things that ordinarily they would even not be able to talk except on that camera.
Right.
I don't think everything is totally bad, but I think the worry of most Nigerians is that, oh, is it going to be another talk shop and people is going to be wasting money? I don't think the perception and the conceptualization of this, no. I don't really think that...
well, that could also come from the trust or lack of trust that a lot of people have in the National Assembly. But we're almost out of time.
Unfortunately.
We've literally got a minute or so. I understand that the budget for defense, and you may know this because you are chairman of the Navy, the Senate Committee on Navy, I understand that the budget for defense is higher than that of many West African countries combined, yet many of them are safer than Nigeria. So the problem appears to be a lack of oversight, isn't it? And that's the job of the National Assembly.
Not necessarily. First,
so rather than doing your oversight, you want to hold a big sort of summit,
not necessarily.
To blow some more cap.
I think talking about the budget defense is bigger than how those countries put together. Do they have the size of Nigeria in terms of population, in terms of the borderline that has to be looked after, in part of the coastal line? So you need to put all of this side by side. Nigeria is a big country. 300 or so ethnic nationalities, thousands of kilometers of
Which
borderline.
is why you should have a bigger defense force. And that people have been saying that for a long time.
That also is a function of budget. Now, you are already complaining that the budget is much higher. If you now, in any case, you create a defense force based on your perception of the external aggression which is coming. So if you don't do that, then you're just going to have loads and loads of people who are waiting doing nothing. So these things needs to be balanced. Charles, you know it. You know it, Charles.
Okay. Well, I have to say that it's really been lovely talking with you. And I particularly enjoyed discussing the National Political Summit with you, and I do hope that it goes somewhere with, as I said, eminent people like you on board. Gbenga Daniel, Senator Gbenga Daniel, is the co-chairman of the National Political Summit Group, former governor of Ogun State, and the Senate Committee chairman of the Nigerian Navy. Thank you very much indeed.